Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel, guys. Yes, today I have for you all yet again another exciting video. And as you can see, the title suggests, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospereth. I am the Lord that healeth thee. This is the scripture passage that we are going to look at today. Now, if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you should be well acquainted with these scripture passages that comes from 3 John verse 1 and Exodus 15 verse, 26. Even if you don't know Exodus 15 verse 26, you should at least be acquainted with 3 John verse 1. Now, these are scripture passages that a Seventh-day Adventist would use to actually promote their diet gospel, as though the scriptures actually teach a diet gospel. I have debunked this teaching here of their diet gospel more than once. I have a playlist in and of itself that is dedicated to refuting Seventh-day Adventist teachings on health and diet. You can look in that play section. You are guaranteed to find scores of videos where I refute their arguments. But I'm also going to do so yet again, looking at these two. And these two verses would have been the final verses, I believe, as proof text that I have to look at where the health side of Seventh-day Adventist teaching is concerned. Now, I'm going to read a few quotes for you all. Yes, I'm going to read a few quotes for you all, right? Now, the quotes, instead of reading them out word for word, I'm going to put some of them on the screen and basically explain. So the first one that you are seeing so far, you will understand why they actually use Exodus chapter 15 as one of their texts to promote their quote-unquote diet gospel when you see how Ellen White actually interprets the verse, right? Ellen White goes on to quote where Christ gave to the Israelite instruction in regarding to their habits of life. I'm reading from the quotes here. It's already on the screen, right? You can just pause it. And he assured them, the Lord will take away from thee all sickness. When they fulfilled the conditions, the promise was verified to them. There was not one feeble person among their tribes. So this is what God says here. There is not one feeble person among their tribes. And if they would obey his conditions, then he would take away from them all sicknesses. Right? Now, the fun part is where Ellen G. White, from another quote, or another paragraph rather, where she says, these lessons are for us. There are conditions to be observed by all who would preserve health. All should learn what these conditions are. The Lord is not pleased with ignorance in regard to his laws, either natural law or spiritual law. We are to be workers together with God for the restoration of health to the body as well as to the soul. So, the same lessons that were for them, right? If they obey God, God will take away all diseases from them, right? And she show you how God was indeed faithful to them, that once they obey God. And it tell you that not one of them was feeble. She's quoting scripture here, It show you that God fulfilled his promise to them that if they obey him, right, he will remove sicknesses from them. And these lessons are for us also. This is what Ellen G. White is trying to say here. Right? Now, while something about this is actually very shaky, before I even talk about why it's shaky, I will at least be fair to her and post quotes in the comment on the screen. Quotes that are very much pretty decent. Quotes that I would actually say we can say we agree to it 100%. Right? But when she goes on to now say that these lessons are for us, right? And then in another quote she said, the words spoken to Israel are true today of those who recover health of body or health of soul. I am the Lord that healeth thee. This is what God says to such individuals. Now, there's a simple way that I'm going to debunk that idea of Ellen G. White by just simple reasoning it out, right? Now, the first thing that you should ask yourself, God says that if you obey me, I will not put any of these diseases that I put upon the Egyptians upon you. So if those same lessons are for us, we have to interpret it then that anyone who disobeys God now, is at risk of him putting the diseases that he put upon the Egyptians upon us. Now the question to ask is this: does Christians in this modern day and age, do we actually disobey God as those Egyptians disobey God? The answer to that is yes. Yet nowhere in history does it say that any Christian was actually plagued with none of the diseases that actually plagued the Egyptians. In fact, none of those diseases are in existence today. So God wasn't serious, because if he was serious, he would have placed those diseases that was on the children and the Egyptians upon those who disobey him, because there are many of us who today disobey Jesus or disobey God. In many things we don't always walk in obedience, but none of those diseases doesn't plague any of us. Clearly the text has nothing to do with us, because if this was true, then God should fulfill his promise in placing those diseases on us once we disobey, and we do in fact disobey him from time to time. Right? The same is true that according to the verse, if you obey him, you are alright. What they try to make out of this is that once you obey God, we shouldn't get sick. But there are many Christians, as obedient as they want to be, they do get sick. Many of them, they die from illnesses. Many of them, they contract, if it is even a common flu, they do get sick. Even when they're trying their very best to obey God. Because whereas back in those day and age, where your health is dependent upon obedience to God, it is not so with us. With us, our health is dependent upon how we treat our body. Do we eat healthy? Right? Do we exercise? Do we get enough fresh air? Do we get enough sunlight? Do we get sufficient water? Right? It is dependent upon these factors, as well as hereditary as well. Does our mother or father has diabetes? Does our mother or father has a trait of sickle cell? These sicknesses that can actually pass down to the child. So sickness in this day and age is not dependent upon if you're obedient to God or not. No, it is dependent upon two things: how you treat your body, and if your mother or father doesn't have any illness. That is what it is dependent upon. I dare a Seventh-day Adventist to try to prove that this text is for us, and that once we are obedient, we won't get sick, because many Christians get sick, and many Christians die from different illness. For example, Timothy himself had a sickness and often infirmities according to the scriptures. That alone show you that the text has nothing to do with us. It was applicable in the time of the children of Israel in those days. That text was for the children of Israel in those days. It wasn't for anyone after those days. It wasn't even for anyone in the New Testament, because if that was so, during the time of the New Testament, Timothy wouldn't have been sick, because I'm sure he was obedient to God. I'm sure Timothy was obedient to God. Yet, he had often sickness. What does it say to you? Ellen G. White's interpretation of that is 100% wrong. 100% wrong. The text is not for us in this day and age. Right? So with that being said, let me go on further in the verse. Or in the quotes from Ellen G. White rather. She goes on to say, the desire of God for every human being is expressed in the words, Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. He it is who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases, who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who crowneth thee with kindness and tender mercies. When Christ healed disease, he warned many of the afflicted ones, Sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee. quoting John 5 verse 14. Thus he taught that they had brought disease upon themselves by transgressing the laws of God, and that health could be preserved only by obedience. This is utterly false. Because if that was the case, Timothy would not have been sick. If this was what Jesus was actually conveying, Timothy would not have been sick. Neither would many of us Christians have been sick. Right? Neither would many of us Christians have been sick. Are you going to say that the fact that we get sickness is because we are not obedient to God? If that's true, then every Christian is disobedient, because we all do get sick. We all do get sick. The text is not saying that. What Jesus is saying here, the reason why this person had that illness is because God himself strike them with an illness because of their sin. So Jesus is saying to them, know that God have healed you by granting you forgiveness. If you go and do the very things that he would have smitten you for, then a worse thing is going to happen to you. It was just something for that person, not a one size fit all, not something for everybody. Whereas if persons go and sin, they are going to get sickness. No, this is not what Jesus was conveying. Because what it would also mean is that if you're obedient and you don't sin, then you shouldn't get sick. That would then mean that salvation and favor is now by works, because it is dependent upon our works whether we are healthy or not, and not our faith. You see how much problem that this verse alone that Ellen G. White is taking out of context can actually cause? None of the verses that she quotes from, even when she said that he it is who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy disease, all those texts that she quote, none of them is in any way promising anyone health once they're obedient, or bad health once they're disobedient. No, it is not saying that at all. Now back to 3 John verse 2. Is it verse 1 or 2? You all know, because I put it on the screen and on the comment section. Right? Does what John says, is John actually conveying a gospel of health? This is what we are going to find out. John says, I wish above all things that you would prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospereth. The key thing in that statement is that John says, I wish. John didn't say God wish. He said, I wish. In the same way, Paul says, I wish that you all spoke in tongues, and not God wish. If God want everyone to speak in tongues, he would have let everyone speak in tongues, but all doesn't have the same gift. Some get tongues, some get interpretation of tongues, some get miracles, and a diverse different kinds of gifts. So Paul was cognizant of the fact that they don't all speak in tongues, even though that is something that he would have wished, but rather that they all prophesy. So that simply means it is Paul's personal wish and not something from God. In the same way, when Paul says, I wish that you all would remain as I am. But every man have their own gift. Not everyone have the gift of singleness. Some have it, some don't. Therefore, all persons cannot remain as Paul is and choose to be single. That was Paul's personal wish, that you would all would remain as he is. That's Paul's personal wish. In the same way, it is John's wish that you all will prosper and be in good health. Am I saying then because it is John's wish and God and it's not a case where God wish it, that means that God doesn't want us to prosper, be in good health, and so on? No, this is not what I am saying. But what this actually shows you is that John is in no way preaching a gospel of health, because if it was, he would not have said I wish, because no apostle has their own gospel. The gospel is not of any apostle. The gospel is of Jesus. It is not their own gospel, but the gospel of Christ that they go about preach. So he could not have said I wish. If it was a gospel of health he was preaching, he would have to say that God wish. And this is a major point that you all have to take from this. The second point in this, right, is that since it is a case where John wished that, it goes to show you that it is not the will of God that every Christian is going to be healthy. For some, it is for God's glory that you have bad health, that he will be glorified. Because if that was the case, for every Christian who have sickness such as, let's say, sickle cell, lupus, diabetes, all of those sickness that can't be cured. If that was the case, God would have cured them instantly if it was his will for everybody to be in good health. No. Many of us will have to glorify God in our sickness so that God can show that even in our weaknesses and in our sicknesses, in him, we will all be okay. We will all have strength. We are strong in his strength while we are weak. So God is going to allow many of us to remain in sickness for his glory. Many of us are going to die because of illnesses for his glory. And this is the key part here in why John says it is his wish and not something that God wish. Because not all of us is going to be in health. I haven't even begin to speak about what implication this verse has that Seventh-day Adventist is conveying in light of prosperity preachers. Because prosperity preachers take the same text and says, God wish that you all would prosper. Thus, they teach a gospel of wealth. Out of that one verse, a gospel of wealth is taught, just as our gospel of health is taught. And I'm not going to address that part of the gospel of wealth in light of this verse. Not in this video. I'm going to have another video where I talk briefly about that. Right? And show you that just as though it is wrong, this verse is wrong for the Seventh-day Adventists and their gospel of wealth, it is also wrong for prosperity preachers and their gospel of wealth. The text is in no way conveying that all Christians are going to be rich or that all Christians will be healthy. No way. That's not what the text is actually here saying. So we find that neither from John, 3 John, verse 1 to 2, it is not conveying a gospel of health, neither is Exodus chapter 15 conveying a gospel of health. So there you have it, guys. With that said, I end this video. If you enjoyed it, you all know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Bye-bye now.